Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis. Welcome to this DCTV series on the network of global corporate control. Today's broadcast is about China and India, the two Asian countries in the coalition called the BRICS, which includes Brazil and Russia, and this program is also about the world's gold in the global debt facility. This picture describes what is going on. That's the dollar, which is being weighed down by gold, because many countries are now switching to gold, and they don't want paper dollars, which are just flooding the market and becoming they're a problem. They're going to crash. Today's broadcast is being taped on March 10th for broadcast on March 22nd. In today's news, people are starting to see what reality has in store for them. Many people are catching on that we have been living in a false reality that is perpetuated by the network of global corporate control. Why is it that there's a news blackout in the mainstream media about the things that I'm telling you? Today, the news is that gold and silver are spiking as the United States dollar comes under attack. What I commented was it's not the dollar, it's the unconstitutional Federal Reserve note that's under attack. The Coalition for the Rule of Law on the Board of Governors of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund know that the Federal Reserve note is being exchanged first for Treasury dollars, as John F. Kennedy and Ronald Reagan were doing before they were gunned down by the network of global corporate control. This network was identified by Vitali Glatfelder and Battiston of ETH Zurich. That's the best university in Europe. Then, in a global currency reset, all the currencies are being minted out of humanity's gold that's on deposit in the global debt facility. This trust is administered by the Board of Governors of the Bretton Woods institutions. Meanwhile, the United States is in interregnum, as that illegitimate secret military rule in the United States that killed Anton Scalia gets exposed. I'm going to talk to you about the power transition model. This is a model that came to the World Bank from the Department of Defense in 2004. We can analyze what's going on by looking at the power transition model. And this is a quote from that model. Generating a satisfaction gap between the United States and the European Union, particularly its leading regional power, Germany, can have very serious long-term consequences for global stability. That's the end of the quote. Germany, we can see, is not happy about the sanctions against Russia. Germany had brokered peace in the Ukraine. Who sabotaged that peace? It's a secret conglomerate that owns the world's central banks, 60% of the income, and 40% of the assets of the 43,000 companies traded on the capital markets. The network of global corporate control is now trying to sabotage the United States through artificially destabilizing its currency. But since so many people have learned about this network of global corporate control, and about the puppet masters behind this network, it's the network itself that's being destabilized. In fencing, this is known as parry riposte, turning the enemy's force back against the enemy to throw the enemy off balance. Why did General Dempsey and now General Dunford refuse to accept the United States gold on offer from the global debt facility? They are working to bring down the United States and to surrender unilaterally. The network of global corporate control tried to break the United States in half during the Civil War. It's not in the United States' security interest to lose Germany as an ally. It's not in the security interest of the United States to have a weak currency that's no longer accepted by the BRICS, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, in 25% of world trade. The 134 countries in the group of 77 have also declared that they are going to stop using Federal Reserve notes to settle their trade. It's the network of global corporate control that's trying to bring down the United States, working through treasonous agents in the military and Secretary of State John Kerry, who has sworn allegiance to the Skull and Bones Society. He's now a puppet of the network of global corporate control. The power transition model came to the World Bank in 2004, and I discussed it with then-Senator Chuck Hagel in 2008. I have told the Board of Governors of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, who administer the global debt facility, that sufficient people in the United States know about this treason at the top and this corruption, and that the United States is not going to roll over and play dead just because corrupt Knights of Malta and corrupt members of secret societies, who are now fully exposed, they think this is something they can pull off. But guess what? They can't. That is why the Board of Governors of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund agreed that the secret martial law in the United States is not legitimate until the Constitution of 1789 goes back into effect through an Article 5 convention. The United States is in interregnum. That means its government is illegitimate. The world's gold is in a trust called the Global Debt Facility. It was agreed at the end of World War II that the ministers of development and finance on the Board of Governors of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund would administer this trust in the World Co-op called the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. The World Bank and IMF were established for that reason in 1944. The assets in the trust were hidden for 50 years so that at the end of that period, which is called sequestration, there would be no competing claims. The rule, called the Statute of Limitations, goes way back to the time of Rome. I keep mentioning this rule because it is what is keeping us out of World War III. On March 8th, India and Japan announced that they would be joining the United States in conducting a show of force in the Asian seas. The USS John Stennis and 5 other battleships are now in the South China Sea. In 2015, China and Malaysia had been conducting joint military exercises in the Malacca Strait that connects the Indian Ocean to the Pacific. And if we could see the geography of that strait. This is one of the busiest waterways and the preferred shipping route from the Middle East to China, Japan, Taiwan, North and South Korea, and the Philippines. To understand what's going on in the Malacca Strait and the South China Sea, you need to analyze a May 22nd letter, 2015, from China's ambassador, Kui Tankai, to John Kerry. Regarding the ongoing dispute in South China Sea, quote, "We have all the right to build all militia infrastructures in that area using the funds approved by late President Ferdinand E. Marcos for us to support for the security of King Anthony Santiago Martin. But as you saw from the statute of limitations, any previous claim to that gold is now extinguished. We've had more than 50 years. It's now up to the Board of Governors to authenticate whoever is authorized to sign. They have not authenticated ASM, and they have not allocated the global debt facility to pay for this construction. So what China has said is incorrect. And John Kerry has not recognized my role as overseer mandate trustee of the global debt facility. He is not facilitating the replacement of Federal Reserve notes for United States dollars. That's treasonous. That's because John Kerry is a member of Skull and Bones. He swore allegiance to the network of global corporate control. The United States is now in interregnum. John Kerry is not representing the United States anymore. He's simply going through the motions. He has no legitimacy. Also in the ambassador's letter, quote, "We built this facility due to security to King ASM since we learned that he's been transferred the late president's authority on 1989 and great-grandson of late Antonio Diaz Santiago, or also known as Datuk Batul Bugye, Jose Antonio Diaz, and Severino Santa Romana, which we reconfirmed as sole heir over the assets from the Qin dynasty to the Qing dynasty, which patriotically belongs to us, and we recognized King ASM as sole dragon emperor and head of all Chinese royal elders after late President Marcos and his late great-grandfather passed their authority to him. This is false. Under the bilateral Minesfield Breakthrough Successor Agreement, which was signed onto by China, the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF must authenticate ASM, which they have not done. The assets in the global debt facility do not belong to China. The statute of limitations has cut off these claims, as China well knows, and as China agreed to. The idea was that we would not have a war over the world's gold, and we do not have to have that war. China is just out of line. China wrote many letters to me, and so did the Central Bank of Taiwan. Taiwan's central bank and I signed a letter of intent on November 8, 2014, which governs the global currency reset. When China asked me to open the global debt facility to them, I refused. This is what I said. I cannot prevent the world's currencies from crashing into another dark ages with this approach. I need a team surrounding me, and I need to be back in my office in the World Bank headquarters, and I need to systematically consider what is best for Fukushima and what the rest of the membership of the World Bank want. The deal you are proposing is no-go. That's what I said to China. This would have led to World War III. I've been following the power transition model in the Department of Defense, and I knew that that would lead us directly to World War III. It was also going to play into the hands of the network of global corporate control. I have refused each and every attempt to separate the world's people from their assets. When the global debt facility is opened, the network of global corporate control is going to be broken into little pieces in receivership inside the global debt facility. This is what Jose Rizal had in mind, and this is what the Board of Governors decided in April 2015. The United States is going to regain the Constitution of 1789, when the monetary gold reserves in the global debt facility are inside the currencies of all the nations in the form of aurum. All of the fake reality that the network of global corporate control has been trying to dupe you all with is going to melt away like snow in the sunlight. And if you could show a picture of the aurum, this is, you press the gold very thin and you put it in, it's like a plastic envelope, and the value of the bill has the value of gold inside it. So what we are actually seeing is that China is a puppet of the network of global corporate control. There are good people inside of China, and we are going to be reaching out to them. This idea that we're going to roll into World War III, it's not happening. There are enough of us that know exactly what's going on, and the network of global corporate control's puppets in China, they're going to have a very hard time on their hands because we know what they're trying to do, and we're not letting them get away with it. Now let's change the subject and let's talk about India. India has been playing a different game. It has been a quiet force to keep the world out of World War III. We learned several weeks ago that India is now suing for its Kohinoor diamond, which was stolen from them during British colonial rule. And if we could show a picture of the diamond, thank you. India, along with the rest of the group of 77, which is 134 developing countries, agrees that the network of global corporate control is insolvent and getting wound down in the global debt facility. India was one of the delegations that I met with during the annual meetings of the World Bank in Lima this past October. It was agreed at that meeting that I could speak on behalf of the global debt facility for the Board of Governors. Any country which disagreed with what I would say would have to go on record in writing. I met with India's Minister of Finance, Arun Jaitley. I'm careful to clear in advance any statement that has not been previously agreed. But one of the things that I don't need to clear is when there are attempts to steal the assets in the global debt facility. And then I speak with the board's permission to invalidate those attempts at theft. And one of those recent attempts was when Christine Lagarde signed an unauthorized agreement with the Vatican. That's why she got fired. I keep countries informed by writing to the Washington embassies and emailing the New York missions and Tokyo embassies. And of course, I post things openly on the internet. I've had a special relationship with India. One of the whistleblowers at the World Bank that I've worked with the most closely was from India. In 2012, I went to the 40th World Congress of the International Institute of Sociology in Delhi. The IIS was created in 1893 in France, and it's now headquartered in Sweden. You will find, however, that all university disciplines are in cahoots with the network of global corporate control. We have some very serious house cleaning to do. The theme of the IIS conference was After Western Hegemony, Social Science and its Publics. Before I went to the conference, when I was applying for a visa, I was told that I needed to have my presentation at the conference cleared in advance before I could get the visa. So I submitted that presentation. Whenever I travel to an international conference, I make sure that the country knows who I am and what I intend to do. My trip to Peru in October was also cleared in advance at the highest levels by the Peruvian government. During the 2012 conference in India, I was given my own personal bodyguard. One of the funny things that happened to me in Delhi was when I bumped into Mohan Gopal at the conference. Mohan had been my division chief at the World Bank, and he was corrupt. Mohan asked me to take the Chief Justice of India's Supreme Court with me on one of my trips to the Philippines when I was working on a judicial reform project in the Philippines. I refused, and when I returned from my trip, Mohan complained about my trip expenditure report. The only thing wrong with that expense report was that I had a $75 deduction, which was disallowed. Mohan thought the ethics department was going to back him when he said that I was unethical, but instead they backed me. This was a big surprise to Mohan. And then Mohan was fired for retaliating against me. But since Mohan was not yet 50, the Human Resources Department, which is one of the most corrupt departments at the World Bank, put Mohan on a special administrative leave and told him that he could come back so that his pension would vest. When Mohan returned, the Human Resources Department tried to rehire him, and I reported this to the board, and then Mohan had to leave the World Bank for good. So Mohan was very surprised to see me in Delhi. I had nothing to say to Mohan. I just went my way. You can see the chronology on the saga with Mohan when you look at the timeline that I presented in my testimony to the European Parliament, and this chronology is up on my website. Ever since two of the World Bank's ethics officers were fired for backing me, the World Bank's Human Resources Department has taken care to hire unethical ethics officers. In 2003, I went to see Jackie Gates and Anita Baker at the Ethics and Compliance Officers Association conference in Orlando, Florida, and I've been following up with the EEOC so that the World Bank can be brought into compliance, along with all of the compliance officers. We should not underestimate the amount of corruption that needs to be cleaned up in the global currency reset. And now I'd like to talk about how we need to work together during the global currency reset to clean up the corruption. The first thing that you need to do is you need to reach out to people in your community. You don't need to organize a lot of people, but you need to be sure that you want to work with these people. And the thing you need to do before anything else is to get your facts straight. This is not easy, because the mainstream media and most of what you read in the alternative media is simply propaganda from the network of global corporate control. Our history has been written the way the network of global corporate control thinks best. It's not really corresponding to what's actually happened. In an earlier segment, we saw that there's a special science in the Moscow State University to reconstruct our ancient history, which has also been completely gerrymandered. It doesn't correspond to what actually happened at all. We've lost our past. Our past is not the way we think it is. And if we want to find out how to get along better, we need to find out what our past actually was, what the facts are. And you can do this best by working together in a small group. The main reason that this is important, we've just touched very lightly on very powerful military technology, which interferes with your ability to think straight. This technology was used in Iraq to get the Iraqi soldiers completely disoriented. It was very effective. Some people are less susceptible, and what happens is once you realize that this technology exists, you can sift through what seems to be a good idea, what isn't a good idea, and also your emotions are affected. You can be very enthusiastic about something, which is really, when you sit to think about it, makes very little sense. So if you're working in a group, the chance that you can correct each other's misperceptions is much higher. And it's also much more fun. And it also protects you, because if you're just acting individually, you can be interfered with much easier. And a lot of people want to know why it is that I'm sitting here and able to function. It's because there is not a single thing that I have done by myself. And I let groups of people know what it is that I'm up to, so that if I get interrupted, people can carry on. And it's getting rid of me is not going to solve the problem. This is obviously a problem that has very little to do with me individually. It's a problem that exists that people are going to be resolving one way or another. The likelihood that we resolve it peacefully is over 90%. I frequently am asked what it is that I recommend people do with their investments. I can't be an investment advisor. I can say that I think the likelihood that we come through reasonably well without too much dislocation is excellent. I'm basing this on the fact that when people know that the currencies are all going to be changed into gold, there's no reason for the existing false currencies to crash. They're going to be strengthened. We have to come up with a process to do this smoothly, and we certainly don't want to be firing people left and right and create unemployment and multiplier effects. So we're going to have to really work together on this, and nobody is going to be dictating from the center or from the top. I had a very good conversation this week with a group of people in the United States that are working at the county levels, and that's the proper place to begin, to clean out some of the corruption in the county levels. We had a very heated discussion about what to do about the courts, because the courts are not the courts that you're entitled to in the United States under the Constitution. They're not courts of equity. And you're also entitled to be heard by a jury of your peers if you're in a common law country. We don't have that in the United States. We need to find a way to get back to that. And it's not something that you can just dictate from one minute to the next. All of these changes are very fundamental, and they're not going to be happening quickly overnight. One of the best changes that can take place immediately and ought to be taking place is for there to be local currencies in the local towns. And we've had a special session devoted to that. But there's no one way to do it. People are allowed to do it whichever way They all agree. What this does is it creates full employment. In today's segment, we've been talking about the corruption at the World Bank, and we've been talking about the corruption in the local areas. We've been talking about the fact that we're going to have to come up with a way of having a smooth, peaceful transition. We started with a snapshot telling us that the fake reality that the network of global corporate control wants you to believe is not the reality. The reality is that we are all working together for a very bright, wonderful future, because we are taking the network of global corporate control and we are going to break it up into little pieces. I'd like to take a quick break, and I'll be back with you in a few minutes.
We have 3 minutes left in the show.
Oh.
Yeah.
3?
Yep.
Okay, let me just think for a minute about what's a good thing to talk about for 3 minutes.
Okay. Then let me know once you've gotten that, and so you can tell us back from the break. Say welcome back.
Okay. Okay, I know what I'm going to talk about.
All right. Remember to say welcome back. Stand by. And 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back. The most important thing to say about the global currency reset is that this is going to be a dialogue. You can see how the dialogue is proceeding if you look at the comment section in the YouTube videos that we're posting. There are any number of issues that people raise, and the point about it is that all of these issues are valid. People have got to dialogue among themselves as well. It's not just that people are going to talk to me. I'm also requested to publish various videos that people think everyone needs to watch. I'm not here to be a clearinghouse for other people's videos. It's taken many, many years to develop a following, people that understand that this is a group that's all working together. You've got to develop your own constituencies, and you've got to, first and foremost, understand how you're moving through space. You have to ask your friends and relatives to help you see clearly. And then you have to recognize that we're going to need to sequence the changes. I have deliberately not talked about religion because this is very divisive. That's not because I don't think it's important. It's because this is something that is not, nobody's going to tell me or interfere in my relationship with my God. That's between me and God. I don't need a priest to tell me what my relationship is. So we're not going to be talking about that in the global currency reset. And people are going to be in charge of what they want their life and their world to be. In today's segment, we started with a snapshot telling us that the fake reality that the network of global corporate control is fooling many people with is now wearing thin. We can tell by looking at the price of gold, which has been kept artificially low through fake, illegal paper offers to sell gold in the future. Then we discussed China's letter to Secretary of State John Kerry about Antonio Santiago Martin, and saw how this letter is playing out in the South China Seas. Enough people know what's really going on to diffuse this fake crisis. Then we talked about my relationship with India, which is anchoring the group of 77, that is 134 developing countries in the Coalition for the Rule of Law. As Overseer Mandate Trustee of the Global Debt Facility, backed by the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF, I can tell you that the global currency reset is going forward. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudis.